The Queen died very recently. Rest in peace to her. She's very much a controversial figure, but one thing she loved was good food. That's one thing most of us can agree with. Let's honour her by making some dosh. Now let's make a cuppa. The Queen died this September on the 8th, and it means the National Bank holiday is this Monday. After her death, it did get me thinking, and whilst I make some food, I think we should talk about the biggest elephant in the room. Is the monarchy outdated? And should it be abolished? In the words of our current Prime Minister,
we believe in fairness and common sense. We believe in referenda on major constitutional issues. We do not believe that people should be born to rule, or that they should put up and shut up about decisions that affect their everyday lives.
She shared a similar sentiment in 1994 as a teenager, but I digress. Before we discuss the monarchy, let's go on a historical fact file on the Queen's life. She was born in 1926, making her 96 years old at the time of her passing, and she was Queen of our country for 4 years and 214 days. That's a long time. Now, regardless of how you feel about the Queen, she did rule our country for a very long time, even longer than some of our grandparents. I think as well, a fair assessment of our question is to look at the Queen when she was a young girl and when her life began. I think it's easy to view the Queen as an elderly woman, but she was once a young, naive royal. So let's explore that. I also think it's fair to see people in an unbiased viewpoint so we can really understand what's going on. So Queen Elizabeth was the first daughter of her two parents, and in 1942 she had her first appearance at the age of 16, which is pretty damn young. Now in just 5 years, in November 1947, at the age of 21, she got married to Prince Philip. I won't lie to you, as a teenager, 21 is very, very young age. It's the age you're in university, and at just 21 the Queen got married. As you know, royal weddings are always very extravagant and are televised. In 1947, the Queen's wedding was no different.
In 1100 years of British kingship has there been such a day. An heiress presumptive to the throne marries the man of her choice. The setting is Westminster Abbey. They are man and wife. The princess had been in the abbey for nearly an hour. What followed the service was the ornate pageantry of a state occasion. It showed that this was no ordinary wedding, but that of a king's daughter. Following the bridal procession came the bride's father and mother, and behind them 5 kings.
A year after her wedding, she had Prince Charles and then Anne a few years later. Now, part of the nitty-gritty part was in 1953, when her father died the year before, making the Queen at age 27. As you can see, her life changed drastically after the birth of her 2 children. Can you imagine becoming queen at such a young age? Like, imagine being queen at just 27 years old, like having such a high authority at that age. I mean, of course, 27 isn't a grown adult, but that's still really young. You're still, you're still a young adult, I guess. The Queen was also never supposed to be queen. King George V died in 1936, and the Queen's uncle Edward VIII took the throne, then renounced it less than a year later, so that he could marry Wallis Simpson, a divorced American socialite. Edward VIII had no children, so it ascended to his brother Albert. His daughter Queen Elizabeth was now next in line. In this case, not only did the Queen's life drastically change, but imagine going from being a minor royal to becoming next in line for the throne due to changes in events. I mean, how many of us take well to change? In this context, it was huge. Okay, the Queen became queen due to what? Small little change? I don't know about you guys, but I don't think it's easy for your life to just suddenly change that quickly. However, the Queen also took the position immediately and began doing the usual royal public events. In a positive sense, the Queen created the walkabout where she first became Queen, where she had a tour of Australia and New Zealand. The Queen rebelled against the royal tradition, where she took a usual stroll to greet crowds of people in person, rather than wave from a protected distance. The walkabout is now a regular practice. This is a nice gesture and shows she was committed to being a royal. She wanted to speak to people face to face. This kind of does humanize the Queen, and it shows that she's someone who is willing to go against royal protocol. And as far as I'm concerned, it shows that she was somehow interested in what she had to do. I mean, if she didn't really necessarily care, we could argue that the Queen would simply just not wave to people and just go about her business, but she wanted to go up close to people and wave at them. Furthermore, in 1977, after 25 years on the throne, the Queen's Jubilee came to fruition and became the public holiday we know and love, usually because there's celebration and food. As
Coronation, so we thought we would come to the Jubilee. It's only once, isn't it? I was too young for the last one, I'll be too old for the next one. So, join in the spirit, the good old British spirit.
Yeah, you can wave it. Wave that one if you want.
Orange squash, much eating of jelly, and at Cricklewood, much cutting of Jubilee cake. Patriotically dawdled. Releasing balloons, though, in a blustery afternoon proved a tricky operation, and
only to royal passengers is that its motion after a mile or so tends to create a feeling similar to seasickness. Fortunately, both the Queen and the Duke are quite good.
As you all know, there was a Jubilee this year. I personally do like it just because of the food, and I'm sure a lot of you do agree as well. So now I think I would say overall that's a pretty general timeline of the Queen's life, and many things did take place over the years, such as the Queen's Jubilee in 2002 and the passing of the Queen's younger sister and her mother in the same year. However, back to the original question, should the monarchy be abolished? We now know the history of Queen Elizabeth. She was a young 20-something-year-old who became queen at a young age and dedicated her whole life just to that. Imagine the random little hobbies that you have, and then imagine you have to pursue that for the rest of your life with little choice. Of course, we should also know that the royals are incredibly privileged, and we could argue that they are groomed to be king/queen. However, it's also important to understand that Elizabeth was originally not going to be royal, and at the end of the day, regardless of everything, we still are human. Every single one of us on this planet are human. If you look at it from a normal, easy, simple-minded context, Queen Elizabeth was a 27-year-old when she became queen, and regardless of the fact that she was a royal, that's still a really, really big burden on somebody's life, and so it cannot be that easy. However, if we are going to talk about the monarchy and the overall question, should the monarchy be abolished? I think it's important that we talk about the negative aspects of it. And I think when we think of the negative aspects of the monarchy, we do think of Princess Diana, the ex-wife of Prince Charles, and famously known as a mother to Prince William and Prince Harry. Diana had a very tragic life, in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of you guys would also agree. She was just 19 when she was pursued by Charles, who was secretly in love with Camilla, but was unable to marry her due to the fact that I think Camilla was already married, and she was also divorced. So yeah. Essentially, Diana was in a loveless marriage with Charles, and before her wedding day, she became aware that Charles and Diana were secretly in love with one another. However, just a year after Diana divorced Charles in 1996, she died tragically in 1997 on August the 31st from the injuries she sustained in a car crash in Paris. The Queen made a speech about Diana's passing, which she broadcasted on September 5th, 1997.
We have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness at Diana's death. We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express a sense of loss, since the initial shock is often succeeded by a mixture of other feelings: disbelief, incomprehension, anger, and concern for those who remain. We have all felt those emotions in these last few days. So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being.
The common consensus is that Diana was very much idolized by the British public, not only for the poor treatment she was given by Charles, but also because a lot of people believe she didn't exactly know what she was getting herself into. Diana did come from an affluent background, but being in the royal family is a whole other ballpark. Besides, she was 19. That's incredibly young. I'm currently 18 years old, and can you imagine at 19 being married into the royal family, and Charles was significantly older than her? That must have been incredibly daunting. Um, and yeah, she also barely knew Charles as well. It was basically an arranged marriage. Um, Diana talks about her wedding day in a 1981 recording by journalist Andrew Morton, in her 1992 biography, saying, "I don't think I was happy," she added. "I never tried to call it off in the sense of really doing that, but I think it was the worst day of my life." She also says in the recordings, "The day I walked the aisle in St. Paul's Cathedral, I felt that my personality was taken away from me, and I was taken over by the royal machine," she said in a BBC interview. These two quotes indicate that Diana was incredibly unhappy. She regrets being married, and if you think about it, having a lavish and expensive royal wedding may be every guy and girl's dream. Traditionally, a wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life, yet it was the worst day of her life. This indicates some weddings in the monarchy are incredibly negative. It's also very known that Charles and Diana most likely had an arranged marriage. You could argue the monarchy didn't prepare her for the reality of being royal. I imagine it's a lot different than how it is portrayed on TV. And again, because Diana was so young, she probably just didn't know what to do with herself. She also talks about her personality being taken away from her. This opens up the discussion that being royal is a brand. You have to be careful about what you say and what you do. She even talks about the royal machine. So again, going back to this idea that as a royal, you have to be basically unbiased. You cannot really say how you feel because of the royal brand. Like I said before, Diana was clearly very unhappy whilst being married to Charles, and the monarchy very likely told her not to say anything negative about him. I told you that was far from the truth. The Queen very much approved of Diana. In Diana's 1992 biography, Morton said, "The relationship between both women was a polite but formal one, governed by the fact that she was married to her oldest son and felt she had no one else to speak to aside from the Queen. A counterpoint, we could argue that maybe Diana, although she definitely was dealt wrong by the royal family, the Queen talks about how she dreaded these meetings. We can imagine crying relentlessly to one person probably is going to take a toll on them, because they probably will feel like an agony aunt, and it can affect their mental health always hearing about it. So you could argue, although Diana definitely was treated very terribly by the royal family, or at least by Charles, we can also see that even though she came to the Queen to be even when she was speaking to the Queen found it difficult to talk to her because of the amount of traumas that she endured. Morton wrote that Diana was in fact supported by the monarch and Prince Philip, writing that she found perhaps a rather unlikely ally at the palace in the Queen, whose understanding and helpful attitude did encourage Diana to soldier on. So again, despite this, Diana did have an ally in the palace. I think it is a common misconception that people believe that everyone at the palace was Diana's enemy and she felt ostracized by her. I mean, I definitely probably felt that way as well, but according to my research, the Queen really liked Diana, and so did Prince Philip. So she did have people at the monarch that did like her. However, my conclusion to the question of should the monarchy be abolished is that it can simply be up for debate. The monarchy and the royals are a very controversial topic for some. I believe the answer to this question is relative, depending on your values and beliefs. One thing for sure is that the Queen served this country for a long time. Like I said earlier, she served this country for 74 years. She was also given the royal title at 27 years old, and being queen also meant anything to do with the country. She had a choice in that, but it also means that she probably was blamed for things she had no part of. Like I said earlier, it's only fair to view the queen as a human, because that's the part, we're going to view her in a human lens. I assume that sometimes the Queen and the monarchy in general are blamed for a lot of things that go on in this country. And whilst it might be fair sometimes, she might be blamed for things that maybe she didn't really have any part of. The Queen was also constantly televised and pictured. And The Guardian says, the quote, her reluctance to emote in public, a generational as well as genetic trait, was also ascribed to her being unsentimental and aloof. In fact, during her tour of Australia in 1954, so this was when she had just become royal, officials first noted the smiling problem, picking up on press reports that she looked quite glum. I've got the kind of face that if I'm not smiling, I look cross, but I'm not cross. I think most of us can't imagine always having to emote or look the part, and also the legions of criticism from the public, positive and negative, over her 70 plus reign. So, like I said there in the quote, Queen Elizabeth talks about how she comes across cross even when she isn't. So, like I said before, the royals do get a lot of flack. And like I said, sometimes the flack is valid, but other times it is not. So there are times where the royals are picked up because of how they've dressed or they've made a funny face. And if you think about it, that's not really fair. You know what I mean? But yeah, I also think, like I said as well, constantly always having to look the part, and also the amount of criticism that royals get can be a lot. I can't imagine the amount of shtick you get as a royal person, especially somebody like the Queen. I mean, look at how Meghan Markle was treated by the British press. She was criticized day and night for how she looked, how she dressed. It can't be easy being part of the royal family. And although they are a privileged bunch of individuals and they don't have to pay for things, they don't really have to work for much, and they get to live rent free, we can also argue that there is a price for this, because they are basically targets for the media to scrutinize them. And Princess Diana's treatment is a testament that the monarchy is outdated and corrupt. The monarchy is the reason Charles went to marry a naive and pure 19-year-old Diana instead of marrying his true love Camilla, whom the royal family wouldn't have approved. Furthermore, Diana described her unhappiness when getting married and how she would cry to the Queen constantly. It's without saying that the monarchy is an outdated concept in the 2022 era that we live in. There are so many rules and tribulations that the royals are asked to follow. You could argue sexism and so many other things are rampant in the royal family, where women are expected to wear certain types of clothing, etc. Like I said, overall, I think the question too, is the monarchy outdated? Like I said, it's up for discussion. I'm not going to come to a conclusion because I just believe that it depends on how you view it. If you believe that it's outdated, you're going to obviously feel that way, and you're going to have, opinions that hold that view. And other people maybe don't care. Maybe they don't care about the monarchy and they don't care that knows how long. But one thing's for sure, is that in this video I wanted to present some facts on this opinion, and I hope that all of you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what your opinion on this question is. Like I said, I'm kind of unbiased. I don't really have a very strong opinion on this topic. I do believe that the monarchy is outdated, but at the same time, I'm not against it. So yeah, let me know how you feel. Like I said, I did make this video because the Queen did recently die, and I kind of went on like a royal history deep dive, and I thought, why not make a video on that? So if you enjoyed, please subscribe, please give this video a thumbs up, and let me know down below if you like this video, and let me know your opinion on this question. Do you think the monarchy is outdated? Regardless, thank you all, every single one of you, for watching. Thank you for all the sweet comments, because I've seen some of you guys leave really nice comments. Thank you all, I appreciate you. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.